Discussion of the case study on liquidity management at UBS. Problems. Like any other financial company, there are a number of risks that present themselves when carrying out the normal business transactions. One of the major problems that the organization faces is the liquidity and funding management. The two factors are quite important if a company wishes to remain on top of the financial business and to avoid being liquidated. Liquidity is defined as the process through which a company has enough assets as compared to its debts, which is something that helps to keep it afloat. Therefore, it is a matter of concern for each organization in the world. Moreover, a company has to focus on how it would be funded, and therefore, funding is a matter of concern. It is through funding that a company manages to stay afloat in the financial market and have liquidity. Through these areas, UBS company would be made better in terms of ideas and longevity. The problems that the company faces are diversified since they are based on a wide base, and the organization further deals with a wide range of products. The organization also faces the risk as to how it would balance its risks and rewards, and consequently, these problems, even though they may not be unique, are presented throughout the company. The company additionally has to focus on regulatory compliance that would present it with a base through which it can carry out its business in the financial market without exposing itself to legal risks. Whenever there are no legal compliances that are presented by a company, it is usually under authority supervision, and that is one incident that a company like UBS would like to avoid since it presents a negative picture to the whole public who are the company's financial base. There are a number of countermeasures that companies employ so that they may avoid becoming liquidated. One of these ways is through diversification and globalization. However, a company may not avoid the risk through these not usually foolproof ways. This is because, with each way a risk is countered, there is a new risk that presents itself. With diversification, the company does not fully counter liquidity risk, as diversification means more workforce and finances. Lessons learned. From the liquidity management of UBS, there are a number of lessons that are learned. One of the most valuable lessons is that in order to avoid liquidity, a company should be diversified. UBS has diversified its resources in such a way that it is able to have a wide base through which it can spread its risks. The company is involved in banking in Switzerland, and asset management involving intermediaries and institutional investors. Finally, the company is also involved in investment banking and provides securities to business products. In addition to that, the company has ensured that it has funding management. The lesson learned from this is that an organization has to ensure that its funding is always in line so that it may have security. Additionally, another lesson that is learned from the company is the way funding and liquidity are defined. One other lesson is the way that funding risk is defined. It is defined as the risk to the company's ongoing ability to raise sufficient funds to finance actual and proposed business activities on an unsecured or secured basis to an acceptable price. In addition to that, the other risk that is defined is the liquidity risk. The lesson learned here is that the company is quite definitive of the variables that make it a strong business. Another lesson learned is the function of the Treasury, that is to make sure there is a sound way funding is obtained to ensure that liquidity is something of the past. Another vital lesson learned is the global liquidity sheet of the company, that is the universal diversification of resources. There is a way through which liquidity is controlled, and there is security using different currencies. The final lesson learned is the way through which the analysis of the company is carried out to preserve a well-balanced and diversified liability structure. The company carried out a cash capital analysis. This type of analysis from the findings is the one that is quite effective. Recommendations. In reality, it is evident that there is no situation through which the company can be fully protected from financial risks. However, this does not mean that organizations should not try to limit, or better yet look for ways through which they can counter the liabilities. This then means that companies should look for more than one way to counter the flow. With that said, there should be more than two ways of guarding against liquidity, and that is one point that UBS company has failed to consider. The company has only focused on diversification and funding. Nevertheless, what would happen if these options were not available? It would mean that the company would be open to liquidity. Therefore, one of the options that the company must consider is a way through which it can counter the deficiency aforementioned. Another recommendation that should be considered is the way that the company organizes and raises its funds. The company should have set rules as to where it can collect its funds, since the open way that it collects its funds may lead to corruption. Bad image is something that an organization of its stature should not be accustomed to. Additionally, the company should also work on its bank's liquidity management if it wishes to ensure heaven in the financial market. The current analysis that is in play and overseen by IBFX-CCT is not that efficient, and hence it would mean that in order to ensure that the analysis is quite efficient, the company should use a number of ways other than the one in play. Diversification consists in the fact that a company avoids liquidation, which is usually not an easy task. Financially, risk is something that is quite not a good thing for a company to expose itself, and, hence, it means that in order for UBS to be secure, there is the need for it to have trusted partners on the financial basis. Overall, UBS is a company that has adequate security in terms of liquidity, but it still needs to do more to ensure that it is safer than it is currently.